do. It's consult a therapist or consult someone that has knowledge in that field, and either try to get therapy, whether it's verbal or medicated.
Yeah, yeah, and I'll footnote and say that like in 2020, I have a feeling that most everybody's feeling anxiety, like of some sort, and not all anxiety is bad, honestly. Anxiety is our body's way of protecting us sometimes. Like some of the things we get
Yeah,
anxious about, we're anxious about because we shouldn't do them. But I think that the way we kind of describe that point when you need to really dig into it is when it starts interfering with your ability to do things. You know, it's
yeah,
not just that every once in a while I'm overwhelmed, like I can't concentrate, my relationships are strained. That's when it's important to talk to someone. And it's different for everyone. It sounds like for you, the physiological part of it, the part that like the medication controls is a really big part of it. For some other
yeah,
people, it might be rooted to trauma or something that happened to them, and there might be more kind of situational or psychological sides to it that you do need to do more of the coping exercises and
right,
kind of thing. But I think that's what's important is realizing that just like almost everything in life, there's not like one way, and that's one of the walls I see people run into is they try to do it. They have a friend that was anxious and they're like, I'm going to do the same thing. And then when it doesn't work, they get frustrated.
right,
You know, again, it's just like physical health. We don't all get treated we don't all get treated in the same way. We're different.
right.
So I think that that's a really valid suggestion. And I think it's important, especially with anxiety, to talk about medication. It doesn't mean that everybody needs to take it, but we definitely need to take the stigma away from taking it.
Right.
Like there should be no more stigma around anti-anxiety and antidepressants than there are antibiotics. You know, I mean, it's
Right.
if you need them and they're given to you in the right way, that's what medicine is for. Um, I saw somebody ask, and this is a good lead in, because you mentioned before and you talked about like cultural barriers to help seeking, like
Yeah.
different cultures. Talk to me a little bit about so like for me, for example, I grew up in a very southern conservative town. My dad was a Southern Baptist minister. So even though I'm not really from a one of the kind of cultural groups that we sometimes see really high barriers to talking about it, I
Right.
did grow up in a place where no one talked about it because like your solution was to pray it away, you know, and
Yeah.
that's a challenge too. Those two things can exist together. Religion and
True.
psychiatry can exist
True.
together.
True. True.
Um, but talk to me a little bit about what you see with your like friends and family and people around you. Like, is there a high resistance to talking about mental health?
Well, I think for my parents and themselves, like even my family background, it was more like you pray to the Lord and everything
Yeah,
everything works out in His time, right?
yeah,
And I am a strong believer of that, but I also believe that His will is done through us as a vessel. So we need to be proactive in order for His will to
yeah,
to manifest. That's just what I believe religiously, and I'm sure other people have different religions. As for the cultural aspect, I think, like I told you, the standard of normality within my field of work is perfection, and therefore, perfection does not include being mentally unstable.
right,
And with that stigma also comes you are not allowed to show those kinds of feelings or show those kinds of emotions or even say that you're feeling those kinds of emotions. And that's why even till this day I feel like a lot of people are still suffering, and a lot of people in my line of work are really struggling with a hard time, but they don't know who to turn to and where to turn to because everyone shuts them down, especially if they're doing well, because they're going to lose money.
yeah,
And that's just the sad corporate truth of it, because at
right,
the end of the day it's a product, and if that product loses value, then the corporation loses value.
right,
Um, and I think that's really sad. And I've been fortunate enough to be in a company where I was able to tell my CEO, look, I'm I feel like I'm done with my life. I
right,
feel like I'm about to die. And then he said, you know what? Don't worry about it. take some time off, figure it out, and you're good. And that's what he's told every other artist
It's amazing.
when they come to him the same way. And I really respect our CEO due to that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know what else to say. I just wish that it could be different. I just wish that the standard of perfection could be lessened. Um and I just hope for an in my ideal world, I'm just hoping that people who do music could be seen as people who do music and not as people to be idolized or romanticized or just thought of as these Greek mythological figures who can do no wrong and are strong enough to break barriers like Hercules and have all these mystical powers that normal human beings don't, because in actuality that's not the case and that's not the truth. And as much as magic and mirrors do in Hollywood and everywhere else around the world for the entertainment industry, they're just as human as you are and they feel exactly the same things.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I'll kind of add, that's my wish too, and I'll add on to that. I also, you kind of alluded to the fact that, like, when you hit a bottom like this, when you, like, have a meltdown, or it's a really tough time, that's a lot of the times where we look back and go, God, I was worried about a lot of crap that didn't matter. Like, why was I,
Yeah.
like, why, like, you know I'll even say to the pandemic, like, I've been walking around this neighborhood in a onesie with pink hair for 6 months. Like, my give a crap factor is, like, really low right now. And you look back and you're like, why did I ever care? Like, why did I ever care so much? I want a world where you don't have to crash and burn to have that feeling, where it happens before then. People are like, who cares? Because
Mm.
if everybody would just fess up that none of us have it together, then there wouldn't be so many people, like you said, who kind of live in this. I talk to a lot of young people who basically say, I feel like everybody else has a manual, like a guide to life that I don't have. Like, I feel like
Yep.
everybody else gets it and I don't.
Yep. Yep.
But you know what? I've never met that person who's got it all together. So it's like I've
Yep.
never, almost everybody in my life or I've met professionally that I've thought, gosh, they just have it down. When you get to know them better, everybody has their stuff, and if we could just talk about it, um,
Yeah. I agree with that.
be better. Have you found, since you kind of come out and started talking about this, that more of your friends or people that have talked to you about what they're going through?
I mean, people have been nothing but supportive, I feel like.
Yeah.
Even I was a little surprised because even my fandom was super super supportive, and I thought they would be a little bit more um just due to the timing, not so much because of the mental health problem, but or the mental health issue, but we weren't able to promote due to me and some of the other members having these mental problems. And then this was a really big promotion for us, so I thought that a lot of fans would be disappointed with the fact that we couldn't come back and play these songs live and have a concert. And even though it is Corona, we could have done all these other things during this time period. Um, but they have been nothing but welcoming and nothing but warm and respectful and loving for me, which I really do appreciate,
Yeah.
and which I think is kind of rare, and that's why I was more so surprised. So just nothing but love for them.
Yeah, that's amazing. And even just looking at the comments, scrolling up, it's an amazing, amazing group of people. But then I also just think it also speaks to the power of just being honest. It's like I think where people get frustrated is when they see people kind of struggling and no one will say why. Like, I feel like when you were talking before about another reason that I think people in the public eye sometimes can't come out is because they know if you show a little crack, there's this whole press machine that's going to come after you. What shuts that press machine down the most is just saying it. Like, and if you just say it, then there's nothing to speculate.
Yeah.
I mean, they'll still find things to speculate, but
Yeah.
um, but like, how are you feeling these days? Like this week, how are you doing?
I'm feeling much better. I've recently started streaming on Twitch, and I feel like that's another outlet for me because gaming has always been a passion in my life. And it's fun to be able to interact with new communities, and especially during this time of crisis and pandemic, where we should be social distancing, and I feel like I'm kind of doing my part, as well as socializing online and making friends, and that I've never would have from across the world on a platform that I never even second thought of doing ever. And that's been super cool. And just keeping up with my meds, I feel good. I mean, I take the extra medication here and there because my I still haven't found the trigger to what my anxiety or my panic disorders um are. Like there's I've thought about it for a million times over and over, and I can't find the trigger for it. It's always uncalled for. It's always at the most random times. It'll just be literally me sitting at home, or it'll be me working on set, or it'll be me in the studio, and like I don't get it. Like I could be at home sleeping, and I wake up to it. Like there's no trigger for it ever. So I'm still trying to find that, but for the most part, it's been great.
Our minds are very complex machines and stuff they keep, just they kind of can process and that subconsciously we can be dealing with. But then also, like you said, there's a physiological side to it. Like there isn't always a reason, and I think that's what's frustrating about it.
No.
Yeah. Are you doing talk therapy too, or are you just right now on medication? Are you okay?
Sorry, can I go blow my nose real quick?
You can. I'm sorry. I just like let you do that.
I'll get back.
Go for it. I'll be right here. I can answer some questions. Let's see. I can answer a question. Dawn. Um, so here's a question I can answer. What would you do if you're scared to tell somebody? Um, I'll say two things about that. One, if there's somebody that you think you need to talk to about that you're scared to talk to, maybe first have the conversation with somebody that you're more comfortable talking to, so that you kind of sometimes just the first saying it out loud is the hardest part. So if you say it to somebody that you're more comfortable with. But then the other thing is we've been involved with some like research studies where we interview a lot of people. And I will tell you that almost everybody that was afraid to tell somebody they were struggling because they thought they were going to judge them, after they tells us it was fine. I'm not saying there's never a situation where you tell a parent or somebody that you're struggling and they don't react well, but generally our fear of how they're going to react is much bigger than what actually happens. And when we do surveys and we ask people, if you got treatment for mental health conditions, would people look down on you? Most people say yes. But when we ask them, if you knew a friend that got mental health treatment, would you look down on them? Most people say no. So what that tells us is that a lot of it is just our belief that people are going to judge us.
Right.
And so my advice is always when people are scared is just one, try it on somebody you feel safe with, because after you say it once, it might not be so scary. And then also just know that the reaction's probably not going to be what you think it is.
Yeah.
For sure. So we talked about that. Oh, anyway, I was just saying, like, did you do talk therapy at all, or?
Oh,
Yeah.
I tried it for a while, and it didn't really help me too much
Yeah.
because as much as person, so everyone that's in my circle knows literally everything about me. So there wasn't really too much to tell to the therapist.
Yeah.
um, so yeah, I tried that for a couple months and it didn't help. And I tried that way before because I felt like I was getting a little depressed, and then obviously there's the stigma of my work line publicly being seen going to a therapist. So I was doing my counseling through an app called
Mm-hmm.
BetterHelp or something like that. I forget what
Yeah.
the name was, but
I
I was
think
going through that app.
it's
BetterHelp, right? Yeah. So I was going through that app, and I had a wonderful lady that I was talking to, and as great as our conversations were, I feel like I wasn't really evolving from anything, or just there was no take from that. So I stopped that, and then I used the medication, and I was brand new again.
Yeah. Well,
It's crazy how that works.
yeah, and and it can change. There are some people that it's really helpful to go to a therapist every week. There are some people that go to a therapist when they need to,
Yeah,
and then, it's different. And it can also change. Again, it's just like the physical stuff. It can change. So
yeah,
6 months from now, there may be parts of this that are different, but that's why we have to kind of stay on top of it and like lean into it and, pay attention to it,
right.
and if something changes. Also, I did not know that you were a gamer when I wore my super cool Super Mario onesie,
Yep.
so to tie in. Um, well, this is, I have a question, but I'll do this one. What, well, you kind of already said this, but what made you finally decide to speak out?
I'm a very transparent person. So everyone in my community, whether they follow me on Twitter, whether they follow me on Instagram, know that I'm pretty honest about everything that happens to me.
Mhm.
And for me, I've always been outspoken about what happens to me at the point that it happens to me. As soon as this happened, I apologized because I told them that I was part of the reason that we weren't able to promote. I was going through this and this. Please give me a little bit of time to be able to fix my issues. Because at that point, I was literally just, I felt like a corpse staring at the roof of my house for literally like 3 weeks, just not feeling anything. And it wasn't the meds. It was every, I think it was 26 years or 27 years of that just all coming to me at once. And I felt it. And then I kept taking my medication. I felt better. And what really made me want to do this line, especially, was because, I mean, I've seen other members of brother of my company's other groups, like Got7, do their lines with Represent. And I kind of saw this as an opportunity to raise awareness because I was hoping that I could teach people to cope with these kinds of things and I could create dialogue and increase awareness about mental health and maybe break the stigma of it just a little bit. Even just a little bit. Touching at the surface would be enough for me. And that's what I was hoping to do with From Friends. And I'm hoping that it's working. We're not sure yet, but we're hoping that it's reaching some ears and it's letting people know that it's okay to feel a certain way. So I would say that for this campaign, I started up for that sole cause. And for me, speaking out about my mental health problems, I feel like it was when it first started. I popped off on it. I was like,
Right.
this is happening to me. What's going on? Help me.
Well, I think that's important, and I know there are some people who kind of don't want to tell their story until they feel like they're all the way on the other side of it and everything's kind of like nice and neat. And I get that, and it's everyone's choice, right? What you want to share.
Mm,
But I do think there's a real value in going through the process with people because that's what makes the process less scary. Like
yeah.
if all I'm ever doing is saying I went to therapy, I went to treatment, everything's fine, you're not getting more comfortable with what that looks like.
Yeah.
And I do want to note because I saw a comment where somebody said that therapy was really important to them. I do want to note that I don't. No one's saying that therapy isn't talk
Yeah.
therapy
Yeah.
super important. For most studies actually say the best treatments are a combo of medicine and talk treatment. What I was just
Yeah.
saying that it's different for everybody. Like it's a matter of um, what I say when it comes to talk therapy is exactly what you did. At least try it. Like at
Mm,
least give it a try. And if it's not working for you, or if you need to go to a different therapist, or you decide you're just going to use therapy when you know you think you need to, like that's really
right.
important, to work out on your end. Um, but and then so the From Friends, now coming back around to that, was there something specific that your friends or that your kind of support network did that really made a difference or that made kind of this whole process easier for you?
If I could just add to our previous topic right before jumping on the From
Sure.
Friends line, I would also actually highly recommend, for me, from my personal experience, though I'm no expert and I have no expertise or knowledge in this area, and this isn't my field of expertise. Like I said, I'm gonna say it over and over again just so people don't misquote me. But I would actually, if it was me in your position, I would try counseling first before medication because medication affects your serotonin levels and it tampers with the chemicals in your brain. So it's gonna make you feel a certain way. It's gonna change your body, and it's gonna do things to you that work in different ways for different people that may have side effects. But therapy and vocal verbal counseling doesn't. So I would try, if that could work for you, if that could be a sole solution, I would try verbal counseling pre-medication.
Yeah. Well,
Definitely.
and and that's generally the, like sometimes people can get medication from their like general practitioner, and I'm
Mm,
not saying that's a bad thing to do or a bad place to start, but we would always recommend that you also talk to like a mental health professional, because it's also good sometimes to be in touch with someone who really understands the condition, so you can just see how the medication's working,
right.
like you can um, sometimes medications can make you feel better for a while and then you can feel worse again, or and just if one thing I will say too is like if you ever decide you need to stop taking your medication, that's definitely something you want to do in conjunction with a professional, just to make sure everything's fine. um, but yeah, you're exactly right, to talk therapy. And also different, it depends on what you're dealing with, like you said, like as
Sure.
of now in your journey, yours isn't attached to a specific thing that
Yeah.
you need to also. I'm gonna my the Jet team member who's monitoring questions, I think she's being polite and she's saying people keep asking about both your hair. I don't think they're asking about my hair, but there are a lot of questions about your hair, so can we just talk about what color your hair is?
I don't know.
Okay.
So it's supposed to fade out to like a grayish color, but for now I just got it dyed the other day. So it's still in like this brown ashy color. Yeah. And you got that nice pink going on.
Yeah, I just really dye my hair to match this light behind me. I just whatever color I I
I
actually, the
see.
lights change color and I do change them to match my hair, but that's a pandemic. Like I don't know what else to do. But my hair is beach blonde and I just put stuff in it to change
I
the color.
love it. I
Uh,
love it.
but I mean that what? It's like I think we have to get creative right now, and figure out how do we deal with all this. Like,
Yeah.
in LA I've been inside since March. We've
Yeah.
go out to the stores and stuff, but it's we definitely have to start getting creative. Speaking of pandemic, because I know that Insta Live is going to cut us off here in about 9 minutes, but one of the things that I've heard from people I've talked to who have dealt with new or different mental health struggles during the pandemic,
Mm,
and it sounds like you all are a little bit out in the world, but is kind of a fear of, okay, I have it under control in this setting, but
right.
then do I have to, is that something that you think about at all? Is like, kind of the dynamics of when things do return to normal and you go back to your routine?
I am a little bit afraid.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. I am afraid of promoting again. I'm afraid because I don't know when it's gonna strike, and I'm just praying that it doesn't hit me during like mid concert, and then I'm at this segue in this cross path where I'm like on stage singing, and all of a sudden it hits, and I don't know what to do. And but hopefully, I am hoping that this time of quarantine for me personally could be a time of healing,
Yeah.
and it could be a time where I take some time for myself and learn how to fight this and be proactive about this before I get back to work. Well, I'm already back to work, but before we start promoting again physically in front of audiences and people, so that I could have this all under check and be able to do my best for my fans.
Right. Well, and you also have to remember too, not that you're doing this, but that, when you talked about before that perfectionism, kind of a lot of times people who have struggled with perfectionism will then also try to be perfect about their recovery. It's like,
Uh,
so like I finally got to the point where I admitted that I needed help and I'm getting help, but now I have to be like the perfect patient. And you have to
right.
remind people like it's okay to just have a bad day. Like
Yeah.
it's if again, this is where it's tight. If you were dealing with like a physical condition and you were feeling tired and worn down, everybody like, oh, that's totally understandable because you're dealing with this condition and that happens sometimes.
Yeah.
The same way, like it should be the same way, that it's like if you have panic attacks and
Right.
25 days out of the month you're doing well, that's a score. And so if the
Yeah.
other 5 you kind of don't do much or aren't as productive,
Yeah.
you have to kind of give yourself a break. But the reason I kind of got asked you that question about being scared going back into the world is I think it's also okay for us to admit that. Like I've even
Right.
wondered, like I feel like I've changed a lot, like in the last 8 months. Like, what does that mean? Do I still like my friends? You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah, yeah,
am I
yeah,
still gonna want to hang out? Do I still,
yeah.
um, and I think it's okay just to admit that in the same way we've all had to wing this together and figure out how to do it, we're just gonna have to figure that out. And so my my hope for you, especially because there's 6,000 people here listening to this, is that if that happened to you on stage, you could just go into your microphone and say, "Guys, I need to," it doesn't
I'm
have to
going
be
home.
okay
Bye.
to say it. Bye, bye. I don't know if your management. I don't know if your management would like that. But just like, guys, I need a break. Hand it back.
You know, you know,
Um,
it'd be crazy though. I think my